All right, Oregon 30, Penn State 24 in just a gut-wrenching two overtime loss in Happy Valley. My name is Connor Griffin. I hope this microphone's working. I'm trying it out. It's a new one. We'll see if it does. Um, but yeah, I don't know how else to spin it. It's the same shit every year. Every year. At some point, we just got to come to this realization it's not going to happen. This is the ceiling with Franklin. This is as far as we're getting. I thought this would be different. I thought this game would be different. I thought tonight, when you have three cupcakes and a bye to prepare for this, when you essentially had the entire offseason to prepare for this game, when it was at night in a whiteout, you return all these guys from last year. It's the best team that James Franklin has ever had. It's the best coaching staff that he's ever had. As we now go and get Jim Knowles, who's an elite defensive coordinator, maybe the best in the sport. I firmly believe is the best in the sport. All this stuff adding up, all of it. This was supposed to be the game to take. You were finally favored against one of these big teams because that's typically the case too. Okay, we never win the big ones against the Ohio States or the Michigans of the world, but we're never really favored. It's not like we're expected to. This was a game where you were expected to, and you could have come out and taken it and maybe not changed the narrative entirely, not change the big game James persona, but you could have at least shown people, oh wow, yeah, Penn State won a big game. That's a feather in their cap, and maybe this year is different. Nope, so far it's the same. It's the exact same. And people can try and rationalize it and say, well, Connor, there's got to be a loss or maybe some roadblocks on the way to ultimate success of winning a championship. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm, thinking too much, or maybe I'm too greedy. And maybe I expect more than I should. But personally, this team and this program had three losses last year that all seemed like the roadblocks that they would learn from. And then they would bring that experience and that failure, learning from it into this year where we wouldn't have to be in these situations again, where, at least in this game, where everything is on your side. Yeah, I did not think that they would have to fumble this one in order to then have a successful season after that. No, they should have won this one. They had all offseason to prepare for this game. Everybody knew coming into this year. First three games, cupcakes, you have a bye week, Oregon. Win that one. It's a must-win game. I said it was the biggest game of James Franklin's career because the biggest game of his career previously was obviously the semifinal game against Notre Dame. Well, we botched that, which makes this game, you put it even under a microscope even more because it's a big game that is screaming for you to win and to finally get over this hump and to finally get the monkey off your back. The monkey has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger with every single loss in a big game. And you could have not gotten rid of it entirely, but you definitely could have made the case, oh, yeah, this is a different season. This is a different Penn State team. They mean business if they had made a statement tonight. They did not make a statement tonight. And I don't want to hear anybody try and say, oh, well, they really fought in that fourth quarter. And maybe that's the team that we'll see the rest of the year. And, there's a lot of stuff to build off here, blah, 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 blah. No, no. Do not give me any of that because that is inexcusable. That's the same type of mentality that got us into this mess where the first three quarters we're only scoring 3 points and we are looking like the worst offense that I've seen in the Drew Allar era. I'd have to go back and check the tapes, but watching it felt like that. It's the same thing that Franklin was saying for the past 4 weeks, where you realize, yeah, something's off with this offense. Something doesn't look right. Why are we struggling to move the ball and score against Nevada, FIU, and Villanova? Sure, the score at the end of the game would say 56 to whatever. It'd say 34 to nothing. It'd say 40 to what. And Franklin would point to that and say, hey, we won the game convincingly. Look at what Clemson was doing, how they were losing, and look at what this other team was doing, where they didn't win the game that they were supposed to, or that maybe they didn't win it by as much as they were supposed to. Like, we're handling our business. No, no. It's the exact opposite way you should be looking at it. And I said this in my video I made about Franklin last week. If Nick Saban saw the performance that we put up against FIU, that was so sloppy, He's not saying, hey, we won 34 nothing and we got the win. And hey, it's hard to win in college football. He's saying, we did not play anywhere near our standard today because it's that standard that we need to be setting in the non-con that you carry over into a game like this. We did not come out prepared to play today. And the offense, all those signs where people were telling me, the fans were telling me, Connor, you're too hard on this team. They won 50-10, blah, 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 blah. No, those signs were so blatantly obvious today. Oh my God. Like everything that we thought, or at least everything that I thought, like why are we struggling to run the ball? Why is this offensive line really struggling to get some push? Why is Drew not looking right through these first three games? That just carried over and was magnified to the nth degree for the first three quarters of this game. And so it's that mentality where it's like, yeah, everything's fine. There's stuff to build on. We'll get it worked out, blah, 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 blah. If people try and use that same mentality tonight, I haven't seen Franklin's press conference. I don't want to see it until tomorrow morning. It's only going to make me more mad. If he's up at that podium saying, hey, there's a lot to build on, and we had a great fourth quarter and blah 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 blah, then you can't. I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. At some point, you just have to say, we failed bad tonight. Because even though you fought your way back into it, and you made it a really entertaining game, and you went to double overtime, and you had Oregon, right there for the taking, A, you still lost. And all that matters in the score sheet is that it was a W or an L. Tonight was an L. And B, you were only in that spot where you had to completely do a 180 and get yourself off the mat and fight your way back into it because you sucked as an offense for the first three quarters of the game. Period. When you had, again, I might say this 5 to 10 times throughout the course of this video, you had 3 cupcakes and a bye to prepare for this game. How do you come out looking so flat offensively? How do you come out looking so unexplosive, so uncreative? It was ridiculous. And the creativity we did show, it was way, way too cute. It almost came back to bite us at the end when Drew actually got into a little bit of a rhythm, and he's making plays with his arm, but mainly with his legs, and he's moving the chains, and he's getting us down the field trying to tie the game up in the fourth quarter. And we put Katron Allen back there for a direct snap where it was a false start. And it was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I really don't know what's going on. This offense, people could disagree, from outside the fan base, but I think people within the fan base know that offense last year was so much fun to watch. It was all the window dressing, and it was the formations, and we're explosive, and we're pulling off all these long runs, and Drew's slinging it in the passing game. I know, obviously, once we got to the bigger games down the line, it didn't necessarily work out like that because we went up against better defenses, and they found a way to completely negate our passing game. They shut down our receivers, but Tyler Warren's doing his thing, and maybe that's all that this is that we don't have Tyler Warren anymore, and we really miss him. But truthfully, I think the only reason why we had to use Tyler Warren in that capacity last season was because the receivers were so piss poor. But we supposedly really, really upgraded at receiver. And I still believe that. I still believe that after this game. So I came in thinking okay, well, the receivers are going to be better. We still have some really solid tight ends. The running game, everything. Nick and Katron are back for a 4th season. It's supposed to be the best offensive line on paper since the 90s. And you get a 5-star quarterback going into year 2 of this Andy Kotelnicki system and year 3 as a starter, on top of a year in his freshman season where he's getting to learn behind Sean Clifford, and he played in 10 games. This guy has so much experience, and this offense should be flourishing, and they're just not. And that game tonight was lost. I don't want to hear about, Drew throwing that pick. Oh, man, it was bad. We'll get to that in a second. That's the reason why we lost. No, again, we'll get to that in a second. Oh, man, those missed holding penalties. Deny was getting wrapped up. Oh, man, that overturned call where we could have had a massive fumble recovered in the red zone where Oregon was driving, and then Zaki, runs it for another 40 yards. Oh, man, if that goes our way, then, man, no. The game was lost when Penn State, the defense was on fire. Not necessarily forcing turnovers, not necessarily, forcing sacks, but they were getting Oregon off the field. And there were multiple times, 3rd down, 4th down, They made some really big plays, some really big tackles. Amari Campbell, those first two drives, I was like, oh my, he's playing out of his mind. You only allowed 3 points as a defense to Oregon, this high-powered offense with talent all over the field, such speed. 3 points to Oregon in the first half. And instead of your offense going out and getting 14, 10, they could only match what Oregon got. They only got 3. That's when the game was lost because you knew Jim Knowles is doing his job. The defense is doing their job. But as long as this offense just continues to stink up the joint, and as long as this offense is continually going through these 3-and-outs, like this defense is going to get worn down. This Penn State defense is going to get worn down. They're going to start getting gashed. This Oregon offense, they've settled in now. The crowd no longer really rattles them or anything. Like, they're going to succeed. They're going to be able to pull off some drives. They're going to be able to score some points. And our defense was not going to be ready for it because they were just on the field for so damn long. It kind of happened, and you saw us go down 17-3. And at that point, I'll be honest, I was like, okay, yeah, game over. I almost thought the game was over when it was 10-3 because the offense was anemic. And that was the issue. You had all this time to prepare, and that offense was not prepared. They came out awful for the first, 49, 50 minutes of this game, to the point where they have that minute 30 drive where Drew throws the insane pass to Devontae Ross in the end zone, and we cut the deficit to 7. And you're thinking, where has that been? Why is it now that we're finally starting to play with this sense of urgency, that we're down 2 scores? Why couldn't we be playing with this sense of urgency the entire game? And then Drew has the great drive where I kind of alluded to it before. It's not like he was really making a whole lot of throws on that drive to tie the game up late in the fourth quarter. But his poise, his command of the offense, you saw him in the huddle just taking over. And in general, using his legs, knowing the moment, knowing when to tuck and run, knowing how many yards he needs to get, how we need to get them, the urgency of that, pulling it off, multiple fourth down conversions, everything. I was like, that's the dog I wanted to see. I've always questioned that with Drew Allar. I do not question at all his potential. I do not question at all his ability. I think if you can harness all of his God-given talent, yeah, he's a top 5 draft pick. It's just the inconsistency that we need to work on. But the one thing I have always questioned is his ability to lead and his ability to just have that chip on his shoulder and ball out and trash talk and just show some guts, show some heart. I have never really fully picked that up with his mentality. He's kind of soft-spoken. He kind of goes into a bubble sometimes when he's a little bit rattled and he's not maybe playing his best. But I saw in that fourth quarter, I was like, that's the Drew Allar I want to see. And that's why it kills me that he threw that pick to end the game. Now, 2 straight big games in a row, Notre Dame and Oregon, it ends with a devastating Drew Allar interception. And you go back to the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. What did us in? It was a Drew Allar interception. It's just becoming a trend now. And the narrative is going to be, yeah, Drew Allar sucks. Now the new one is, oh yeah, Penn State would have won that game if Bo Prabula was in there. They chose the wrong guy. The guy who got you 11 wins last year and won you multiple games like USC and Minnesota, where he put the team on his back and only could throw to a tight end. That guy who won you all those games and brought you to the semifinal of the playoff, yeah, you should have moved off of him and you should have gone with Bo Prabula. Okay, yeah, you're right. It's ridiculous when people say that stuff. But anyway, you can't blame them after this game, at least the casuals who are saying this type of stuff. Drew Allar sucks, all that type of things, because for 3 quarters, the offense wasn't great, and he's the leader of the offense. And then he throws that pick that does us in for to end the game once again. So I feel terrible for him. That interception, I don't know what was open. I also don't know if, the play was any good, because it seemed like Oregon pretty much had it snuffed out. Bad throw, bad play, bad execution. Really, really brutal. Because I did, again, convincing myself things I should not be convincing myself. I did have full confidence that we were going to score a touchdown there and win the game on the 2-point conversion. I was so sure of it. Brutal. But the thing with Drew, he very clearly missed some throws tonight, and he was antsy at times. And there are flat out moments where he just zings it in there, where I'm like, I don't even know if an NFL wide receiver is catching this pass. Sometimes he lacks the touch, sometimes he lacks the precision, but also this offensive line really didn't do him any favors tonight, at least for the first 3.5 quarters. The run game didn't do him any favors tonight. Once again, he was kind of on an island, which going back to his first year starting against Ohio State and against Michigan, it felt like that type of game for a while where, yeah, he's on an island and receivers aren't necessarily open. There's no run game, and he's just like fighting for survival back there. All things considered, I thought he still had a pretty good game in that fourth quarter. I mean, that's pretty much the only reason why I think that, because fourth quarter, I was so impressed by Drew Allar. But there's a lot of things with this offense that need to be cleaned up. The offensive line, and it's not just confined to this game. This is an Oregon problem, and you shouldn't worry about it because Oregon has a great defensive front. No, the offensive line has not looked right through these first 4 games, even against the Cupcakes. They're not getting push. We're not creating open gaps for the run game. We're not creating holes. We're not creating lanes. Like I obviously at this point, it's very clear Katron Allen needs to be the number one running back because he's still finding a way to navigate a little bit. He's not as explosive, but he's still finding a way to pick up yardage. Nick Singleton is just lost. I think he had 11 carries for 21 yards tonight. Um, I don't know what's going on with him. I really don't. We found something in the run game last year, too, that really, really worked. And that's what's so baffling to me. Like, it got to a point last season where we were furious if we were trying to throw the ball because Nick and Katron were just getting whatever they wanted to on the ground. What happened? What happened? Once again, this was supposed to be the best offensive line that we have had at Penn State since the 90s. Supposed to be the best pair of running backs in the country. Why can't we get this going? It's not just an Oregon problem. It's been this entire season. We just lost so much of the explosiveness and so much of the fun and so much of the creative juice that this offense had last year. And I refuse to believe that it's just because of Tyler Warren. I don't know. I can't accept that. Kotelnicki in year 2, I was really expecting that he would just, I mean, with all these weapons, with all these toys in his toy box, he was just going to light it up. And he really, I mean, it was a disaster class from him today. A disaster class. There was the 1 3rd and 9 where we're running like Drew Allar on a QB draw, and it went for 0 yardage, and we had to punt even though we were in plus territory, and it completely stalled a pretty promising drive. At least a promising drive compared to the other drives that we had in the game where we were going 3 and out and looking terrible. It's just, I don't know what's going on. I have no clue what's going on with this offense. And another thing, you try and bash Drew Allar and say he stinks and blah, 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 blah. The receivers, I don't know what happened. And maybe it is a Kotelnicki thing. Maybe he's not scheming them up properly. There were plenty of times they just weren't open. And you finally saw Drew on that last drive in the fourth quarter saying, all right, well, nobody's open. I'm just going to tuck it and run. I don't know what's going on. Not many targets for the wideouts in this game, even though we all thought that was going to be the difference. You know, we could barely score. Well, actually, we didn't score a single offensive touchdown against Ohio State last year, and our wide receivers only had like 2 catches. We don't have a single catch by a wide receiver in the Notre Dame game at the end of the year. Like, the wide receivers, this is what's going to take our offense to the next level, and they really didn't tonight. Devontae Ross played a great game. I don't think Kyron Hudson had a single catch. Trevor Pena was more of a weapon in that jet sweep game, which I really like, but he wasn't making plays in the passing game. It's just very strange. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's happening with this offense, but Andy Kotelnicki is absolutely at fault and deserves a lot of criticism after this one. Jim Knowles, on the other hand, thought he played a pretty solid game, or called a pretty solid game. Again, this game was lost when that defense held Oregon to 3 points in the first half, which was incredible. And the offense didn't do anything with it. That's when the game was lost. If that defense plays the way that they did tonight, that's a national championship level defense. And it's just a matter of, can you get this offense in check, because something is seriously not right. And it's all across the board. Receivers, tight ends haven't made as much of an impact this year in the passing game as we'd like. Can't get the run game going. The offensive line isn't getting any push. They're missing assignments in pass protection. It's just so bizarre for a team that returned almost everybody, pretty much everybody outside of Tyler Warren. They just look so discombobulated and so lost. It was abysmal, absolutely abysmal. And I'm repeating so much now, and I apologize, but I'll wrap up with this. It comes to a point where you just got to accept this is the ceiling. Things are never going to get better. And I know people were chanting "Fire Franklin" and they were booing. I think I heard like an overrated chant at one point. We wound up, of course, coming back in the game after that. But for the people who are pissed at Franklin, and for the people who want him out, at this point, can you blame them? I know that there's still plenty of season left, and this was just the first test. And even though we lost this one, it was still a close game, and we'll probably, even if we lose to Ohio State, we'll probably still make it to the playoff, and things will be okay, and blah, 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 blah. But, like, when it comes to confidence, guys, how can you have any confidence in James Franklin and Penn State to go win a big game? If you're an opposing team, how are you possibly going into a game against Penn State and you're scared? How are you scared as an Ohio State or an Oregon or a Michigan or a Georgia or a Texas? Or they lose all the time in these big spots. Why should we be worried? We don't strike fear in people. We don't get these big wins. We never have. Never. And even though this year this was supposed to be the game to change it, no. And the reason why, going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the episode of this podcast, the reason why I was saying it was the biggest game of Franklin's career is because if you win it, you get that monkey off your back. If you lose it, the inverse, it is not going to be pretty. It is not going to be pretty. Listen, and we'll get into the weeds a little bit here. People find it very hard to fathom that Penn State has one of the largest alumni bases in the country, and yet we're behind in NIL, which, I mean, it's funny. Ironically, tonight we're going up against Oregon, who has Phil Knight money. Yeah, we don't have Phil Knight money, but people still, they're like, well, Connor, you have all these alumni. You're struggling for NIL. You're struggling for money. You're struggling for resources. You're struggling for donations. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it does if you realize that a lot of people don't like James Franklin. A lot of people don't believe in James Franklin. And a lot of donors are holding their money because they don't see the direction of this program. They don't see the ceiling being raised any higher. They see this being what we're going to get. It's going to be 10-2. Yeah, we'll make it to the playoff because they expanded it. And maybe we could go on a little bit of a run, but we're not close to winning a national championship. That's what they see. And this was a game that could have changed that. Well, you're going to have the people who rationalize it and they say, this was a moral victory, but you're also going to have a lot of people whose beliefs about Franklin, also about Allar, but mainly Franklin, those beliefs just got so much stronger. It's not even funny. Not even funny. Now the question becomes, do you want to risk never getting back to this level of winning again? Because Franklin's consistent. He'll win you a lot of games. Doesn't win the big ones, but he'll win you a lot of games. And he'll get you into the good bowl game opportunities, and he'll get you into the playoff and all that type of stuff, all that good stuff. He's consistent. Do you want to risk going and getting a new coach, firing Franklin, and struggling, and going back to like a Billy Napier Florida situation, or a Tom Herman or a Charlie Strong Texas situation where they could just never get back to winning like that again? Or are you willing to take that risk because you realize, it's not getting done with Franklin. It's not happening. And if we really want to go and win a national championship, there's got to be a change. because no matter what the case is, no matter how the game goes, no matter what the script is, it always ends with the same conclusion, with James Franklin taking the L in a big game. That is going to be the question that a lot of people are asking after this game. And it's really sad because I thought this would be the game that would silence the doubters. I thought it would be the game that would get Penn State on the right track, and it would show people, no, we're not messing around. This is our year, and we're going to take it. We're finally favored at home. It's a night whiteout. First time in years where we're getting to play a real legit opponent in the whiteout. We have all these returners. We go out, we get Jim Knowles, all of it. It was supposed to be a win tonight. It was supposed to be a win tonight. It was the biggest game of James Franklin's career. It was supposed to get the monkey off his back. Let these guys breathe a little bit. They went through all the heartbreak last year. No, it's going to be different this year. This might have been even more heartbreaking than what we experienced last year. And people are going to say, you know, the playoff game, you could have went to the national championship. The way this game went tonight, this was brutal. This was brutal. I'd say more brutal than what happened in the Notre Dame game, because they gave you hope tonight. They really gave you hope. We'll see if that hope carries on. We'll see how this team responds. I don't know, man. I know this fan base is going to be spiraling. I don't know if the team is going to spiral. I know that the fan base is going to be spiraling. But we go into UCLA next week on the road. I need to see some massive changes in how this team comes out next Saturday. Massive changes. This sucks. I really don't have anything specific about the game. I guess I'll just say, you know, for the first three quarters, Oregon was getting themselves into very manageable third and fourth down situations. They were staying ahead of the sticks. That's how they were able to extend drives and wear down our defense. We were not anywhere close to staying ahead of the sticks. We were always in like 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and it just kept adding up where it was just impossible to overcome. And then somehow, yeah, we overcome that 14-point deficit in the fourth quarter. And I really thought it was going to wind up in a win, and it just didn't. So I don't have much else to say. And I'm already getting to a point in the video. I'm stuttering on my words. I'm scrambling right now. I want it to be different. I really do. And now people are going to laugh at me. People are going to say, Connor, you're crazy. You have to beat Ohio State. That's the corner that you've backed yourself into. That's the situation you've carved out for yourself. You have to beat Ohio State in Columbus, which is a very tough task. But if you want me to believe that this year is going to be different, and you want me to believe that we can actually compete for a national championship and James Franklin can be the guy, I mean, it's on its last legs, that hope. Got to show it against Ohio State down the line, but that's obviously a month from now. We'll see how this team comes out against UCLA next week. I'm going to end the video. I think that's all I have to say. But until next time, this has been Connor Griffin signing off. That was an absolute buzzkill tonight.